They just gave you 5 assumptions that in many cases are just incorrect. So I think that unbounded self-service doesn't really work. People get too hooked on which tools to use, and on specific technologies. People also go and do certifications, and they go and say, I'm an Azure data engineer, I'm AWS data engineer, and GCP data engineer. I think this is nonsense, right? Stakeholders, they ask you for a metric and you give them the wrong number, then they can throw you under the bus. But, if people self-served and they got the wrong number, then it's their fault. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, in the studio, we've got Omar Reed. Omar, you did my career and blocking mini course. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So why did you take the mini course and what did you like about it?
I saw your content online. I feel like it was an interesting point of view to have, like learning from all your experiences. So that's why I decided to take that course. And yeah, that was the main driver for that.
Cool. So I did offer free recorded mentoring sessions to some of the people who did my career and blocking mini course. And Omar, you applied. So why don't you just introduce yourself and then let us know what you want to talk about and we can take it from here?
Sure. So I'm Amar. I started working in the data world around 2018. And since then, I've been involved in different data projects in different companies and also from different roles perspective. And after that, I jumped to the mobile gaming world, which is where I'm working right now. This was 3 years ago. I started in Scopely as an analytics engineer. And since last year, I've been leading a team of analytics engineers here at Scope.
Cool. And what would you like to talk about today?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I transitioned to leadership last year, and I wanted to first understand when you were at this point at Mark during your career, at the same point, what did you do to move forward and to grow as a leader in that stage?
So I think growing as a leader has several aspects to it, right? There's the people aspect, how to lead and manage people, how to lead in an organization and in your company, how to grow your scope and manage bigger things and more complex things and run bigger operations. And then there's also your own positioning within the company, right? And within the industry. So there's a lot of different aspects to growing. I think early stage of growth, what I would focus on is first of all becoming a very good manager and very good people leader. I think that's number one. If you're a manager, if you're a leader right now in your company, it's really, really important that these skills are good and people listen to you. They look after you. You're seen as an authority, as a key person of influence, and people they see you within your team. I think growing stakeholder relationships and also understanding what other people need from you, how do they work, and being able to grow your impact is going to be very, very important. So, what do you work on right now?
So right now, I'm supporting different verticals of a specific mobile game, and we have two different type of projects we focus on. One is like different features that are being released in the game. So it's the end-to-end projects from getting the tracking design to defining and building the different data models and developing the different dashboards that the different business units will need. But also there are other central aspects of the role. There's also a part of building common data products. So it's more product centric. And actually, there's another side of it. And we are now investing heavily on this area, which is because from the start until now, it was all about growth. So it was a lot of new features and a lot of new data models and a lot of needs coming from the business. And now that we are in a more stable situation, we are focusing more on observability, data quality, governance initiatives and not only for building reliability towards the business, but also to be prepared to the next stage, which will be being able to use all the data we produce and the different data models for AI.
And how big is your team, roughly?
So we are a team of 10 analytics engineers, and I'm leading 3 analytics engineers right now.
Okay. So I think, as I said, there's different ways of growing at your current stage, right? First of all, learning how to lead, how to manage other people, how to support them is very, very important. And now maybe managing 3 people feels a bit like a stretch, right? Because you're doing it for the first time. But then, how do you get to a point that you can lead and manage a group of 10 people, 15 people, 50 people? And each one of those jumps and leaps is hard and is challenging on its own. But to make that leap, you need to make sure that the level below that is already feeling comfortable, right? If you're not comfortable managing 3 people, then of course you cannot manage 10 people, right? It's a big jump. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is from company and product and scope perspective, right? So let's say Monopoly Go is your flagship product, right? I've played that. I know the game. It's a cool game. But then the question is, first of all, how do you monetize Monopoly Go? How do you make maximum impact out of this game? How do you increase engagement or increase revenue or increase number of players and all of that? The second question that I would ask is, what is the next Monopoly Go for your company, right? So what is the next product and what makes this product so good or this game so good that means that people want to play it? What can you learn from this game compared to other ones that will inform what you're going to build next? And I don't know if you have that data or you have that information, but if you did an analysis, for example, and you said, okay, let's look at all the people who played Monopoly Go and see what other games they played, and you look for people who play different combinations of games and say, okay, this is the one that works really, really good. That's the best one that we have. What else have they played? Why did they like it? Why did they not like it? Which combination of games is very common? How do we upsell other games to people who play Monopoly Go? So, for example, let's say that 60% of the people who played Monopoly Go are super engaged with another game that you have. So that's great. The other 40% who don't play that game, maybe you can offer that as an example. So that's an opportunity. So being able to think about your company, being able to think about your business in these ways and being able to come up with ideas and not just be service oriented is the next leap of growth, right? Not just wait for your stakeholders to come and ask you questions or tell you what analysis they need or what data model to build or what reports they need, but being able to think about it on your own and think like a business leader and then come up with those ideas and push them and all the way until the impact is realized.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And there's something that you mentioned that I really like, which is not being service oriented and actually during this growth, first initial growth stage of the game. That was the reality. We were very service oriented because like we weren't able to keep up speed of the business at the same speed that we could operate as a data team. So that was something that we really struggled, but we managed to turn that situation, and also we are more product oriented right now.
How did you turn it around?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So we will get requests from many different areas from the business, and it's important for us to identify which are the most impactful ones for the business. So first of all was measuring impact and identifying those opportunities, and then be able to internally prioritize what is more impactful for the business towards the goals it has.
That's great. So I think that basically how service oriented you are is a spectrum, right? And there are teams that are on that far end of the spectrum, and what they do is they just get requests and they don't ask any questions. They just execute on whatever people ask them to build. Then you have teams that are still service oriented but with filtering or with prioritization, right? So they're a little bit more opinionated about what they do. They still get requests from the business. They're reactive and they respond to what people ask them to do, but maybe they filter some of the things out and ask, okay, why is this important? And then they find out it's actually not important, so they say, okay, we're not going to do it. Or maybe they have an opinion and they say, okay, this one is more important than this one, so we're going to do this one first, and that sort of stuff. And then you have teams that are more proactive and they initiate and they come up with their own ideas and they tell the business what needs to be done. So instead of waiting for designers or product managers or engineers or whoever, I don't know, who are your stakeholders and who gives you the work, but instead of waiting for them to come and say, okay, what is our next Monopoly Go? You're the analytics team and you ask yourself the question, right? Which is common sense, right? Hey, this game is going really well. What's the next one? Or what makes it so good? And then you start asking more and more questions and you're uncovering that and you do the analysis on your own. And then you go and tell the business, instead of them asking you these questions, you go to them and say, okay, our next game should have these characteristics because we did the analysis and our games, we can classify them into 5 different types. And these are the things that resonate most with users.
Yeah, actually, related to that, I think it's very important the partnership that we do as data leaders with our data product manager. So we are able to actually execute the building of those products that will serve for the different needs of the business and also not that all requests translates to a dashboard. So we are building dashboards for the sake of, okay, one feature, one dashboard, but at the same time, we build durable products that will serve common needs across the business.
That makes a lot of sense. Very good.
Yeah, I also want to know how would you define self-service? Like all of the data teams want to be self-service, and all of us want to have or business people to be self-served and build self-service tools. But I wanted to know your opinion about this topic and understand what does self-service mean for you and how were you able to implement that in different businesses?
Okay. It's funny that you asked that because I actually did post about it, about this very same topic about 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn. So, what I did a poll asking my audience, does self service work for you? And there were three options. So, one is yes, we did self service and it works. Another one that says we did self service, it doesn't work. Self service doesn't work. And the last one was we never tried self service. And I think that only 33% of people said that self service actually works for them. Okay. And that matches my experience. So let's break it down for a second, right? What is self service? So self service analytics means that people can answer their own questions without being dependent on the analyst, right? So they don't have to go through an analyst to get answers to basic questions. Now, again, it's a spectrum. Some people think that there's certain types of questions and make it very structured, and then they give you some slice and dice dashboard that can answer very specific types of questions, and you can get the answers to them. Some people say that self-service is, you get a tool that is like text to SQL and like an LLM or a dashboard tool that, with prompts can generate widgets and people can build their own dashboards and do their own analysis, to the full extent of you just give people access to your database and teach them SQL and they can do whatever they want. Fundamentally, I think that unbounded self-service doesn't work. Okay, that's my experience. Unbounded self-service, because unbounded self-service assumes several things. It assumes that stakeholders or users know what they want. Okay, it assumes that they can express that in words. It assumes that words have deterministic meaning, and we both know that the word revenue can mean different things in different contexts depending who you talk to, right? Sales would have their own definition for revenue. Finance will have their own definition of revenue, right? It also, there's a question of, do you mean net revenue, gross revenue? Like even that word revenue is incomplete, right? It doesn't, give you the full picture. So you assume that words have a deterministic meaning and the words mean the same thing all the time, which is not the case. You assume that users understand the nuances and intricacies of data and the complexities of data. And to give an example, I had a friend who worked on a company. I think it was Wix or Squarespace or one of those companies that build websites, and he was managing the analytics team. And he said that in some cases, whenever users were asking for some reports, they would automatically exclude all the traffic from China just because it was very noisy, and it would sort out the report, but not always. It really depended on the type of the report. So if you expect users to understand these nuances and when they should exclude or include China and that sort of stuff, then that's being a little bit delusional in some cases. And the last thing is you assume that users want to be accountable for getting their own numbers and take responsibility for pulling their own data. Now, this is an important point, right? Because if one of your stakeholders, they ask you for a metric and you give them the wrong number and they present that something to the CEO and the CEO says, okay, this number is incorrect, where did you get that from? Then they can throw you under the bus and say, oh, Omar gave me this number, I'll go and talk to him, or I got it from an analyst. It's their fault. But if people self-served and they got the wrong number, then it's their fault, and that's an uncomfortable position for a lot of people to be in. So a lot of users actually, unless they're very tech savvy and they're very data literate, they don't want to do that. So I think that I just gave you 5 assumptions that in many cases are just incorrect. Okay, so I think that unbounded self-service doesn't really work. What I think works in my experience is bounded self-service, right? So you give people the option to answer very specific questions or within a specific domain. The data is highly curated, highly prepared for them. There's a lot of metadata. There's very clear taxonomies and definitions, and they know exactly what they're getting. And they work within a certain boundaries. And that I think can work and be very, very successful. So if I were to implement a self-service project right now, I wouldn't try to boil the ocean and give people access to all the data all the time and answer whatever questions they want. I would go back and start looking at repeated questions and things that come up very often. And I would say, how do I automate that? And take it from there. And when I say automate, I mean build a semantic layer or a data model that captures this data that is highly accurate and very clear. I will align on the taxonomies and I will talk to the users and I will say, by the way, when we say revenue, this is exactly what we mean. When we say active users, this is what we mean. So it's very clear what they're getting. And then, give them some interfaces where they can pull this data on their own.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in that scenario, we have to find the balance, right, between having too many very specific products for people to have those boundaries, but at the same time, not being too specific, but having those boundaries.
Correct? Yeah. And it's hard. It's a hard balance to strike. You also need to keep some sort of a log of all the requests that you get from users so you know what are the common questions so you have something to analyze. Because if you just go to your users or your data product manager goes to the users and say, okay, what questions do you have, they probably wouldn't know.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask you also, how do you see the current data space? Like there are many tools in the market. There's a lot of people wanting to onboard new tools, but there's so much offer in the market. What's your opinion on the current situation? If you think there are like too many tools doing the same thing, or you think there are tools for every use case, or you think that the common set of tools would cover 80% of the needs in the data work?
This is a great question. So I think that people get too hooked on which tools to use and on specific technologies. People also go and do certifications and they go and say, I'm an Azure data engineer, I'm AWS data engineer, and GCP data engineer. I think this is nonsense, right? And I'll explain why. I mean, 20 years ago, when I started with data, we had a bunch of technologies. Many of them are probably irrelevant today, and there are very few companies that use them. And there have been new technologies introduced along the way. Many of them are also deprecated by now, right? So technologies change all the time. But fundamentally, if you look at the concepts of data modeling, how to manage data, how to do performance tuning, and that sort of stuff, I mean, these things haven't changed for 20 years. So the tools have changed, technologies have changed, new vendors, the landscape changes. If I look at the modern data stack today, I probably don't know half of the tools, right? And they keep getting introduced on a daily basis. But I understand the concepts, and because of that, if you throw me at every situation, I would be able to understand, oh, okay, this tool fits that category, so it's similar to these things. Okay, I understand what it does. Right. I can do data modeling because these concepts they haven't changed, right? Maybe today we deal with more complex types of data than we did before, but that hasn't changed that much. So fundamentally, I think that if you get too hooked on learning specific tools, then these tools will get deprecated and you're going to fall behind. But if you understand the concepts and if how to manage data and how to get value from data at scale, that doesn't change.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about you built during the last years your personal brand, and I wanted to understand how that impacted your career progression, not only inside a specific company, but also outside of it.
This is a great question. So let's take a step back, right? So you also have a personal brand in certain circles, right? So within Scopely, for example, there are people who know who you are. They recognize you as a reliable person, as a credible source of information. Maybe meetup groups or tech groups or things like that. I don't know if you're involved there. Some people will recognize you and will be aware of you, right? So brand is a function of circles, right? Where do you want to be recognized and what do you want to be known for? And you can say, I want to be recognized within Scopely because I want to get my next promotion, and it's important to me that my CEO and all of my executive team would know who I am, to support my promotion case. Or you say, I want to be recognized, in the industry as a leader because, in a few years I'm going to start my own business and I want people to know who I am. Or, I'm going to leave my company in 2 years. And when I leave my company, I want finding my next job to be easier than if I'm an, anonymous person. Then the question is, what do you want to be known for? And also, who is your audience, or who are the people that will recognize and know you, right? And it matters because if your purpose is finding a job, then you want to be well known by recruiters and hiring managers. If you want to, become an influencer data engineer, then you want to be known by data engineers. If you want to build a startup, then you want to be recognized by VCs, right? And, people who have money to fund your next venture. So I think that you need to define the audience that you want to have, understand where to find them. So VCs may be more active on Twitter, for example, on X, right? Data engineers will be more active on LinkedIn, on Substack. Recruiters and hiring managers will be very active in meetup groups and things like that. So you need to understand, once you map who are the people, what are the places you can find them, what do you want to be known for, and then figure out what do you have to do to make sure that these people recognize you for these things. Okay? So if you want to be perceived as an expert in data engineering, then you have to talk a lot about data engineering. You have to share data engineering insights. You have to cover new technologies. You have to cover, concepts and ideas and share project examples and things like that. If you want to be perceived as a big entrepreneur, then you have to talk about ideas. You have to talk about startups. You have to talk about innovation, about team building. So you want to create the perception that you know what you're doing, so that when the time comes to fund your next venture, there's a lot of VCs out there who know who you are. And if you want to get your next promotion, then your audience is actually your CEO, your executive team. They're available in internal company communication channels like Slack or Teams, or in your meetings and your email. And you want to be known for somebody who's driving the business, helping the company achieve business outcomes, helping achieve growth, more revenue, etc., etc.
Yeah. Would it be possible to hear from your personal experience, like how did your personal brand help you growing?
So for me personally, first of all, it's been tremendously helpful in several ways. One is, I think that it helped me get some recognition for people to know who I am. It's funny because I go and I speak in conferences, and a lot of people in the audience, they come to me and say, "Oh, we've been following you for 2, 3 years now, and we really love your content." I'm meeting them for the first time, but they have a feeling that they know me. I think that it helps me achieve more impact at scale. So one of the things I wanted to do when I left Meta is, I said I have 20 years of career insights and knowledge, and I know how to grow careers. I know how to grow in leadership and that sort of stuff. I want to share a lot of these insights with the world. And I didn't have a scalable way of doing it, right? At Meta, I did have, because it's a big company, and there were a lot of ways I could influence and impact a lot of different people. But now I didn't have it when I left Meta, so I thought, okay, using social media is probably the way, right? And if I can share insights and knowledge with people, then that's going to be helpful for them. And in turn, at some point, it can probably also help my business. That wasn't necessarily the goal of why I started posting on LinkedIn, or started my YouTube channel. It was purely to help people. But it turns out that these things are actually very useful for your business. In terms of my client, a lot of my clients actually find me on social media. They reach out because they see a post or they see a video. I get opportunities to speak in conferences, to write books and author books and things like that, just because people see me as a credible person. And, I think lastly, it's just a social proof. Like, if I talk to a person and they look at my LinkedIn and they see, you know, a lot of posts and a lot of insights shared and a lot of engagement from the community, I think that it helps them see that I'm a credible person, and it builds some sort of social proof. So for business owners, I would say, especially if you're a solopreneur and the brand is you're the brand, then it makes a lot of sense to invest in that. If I started a company, for example, or an agency, then maybe I wouldn't necessarily want to put myself in the front. Maybe I would want the company to be the brand, right? So, I may not know who Scopely's CEO is, but I may know about Scopely as a company because they promote the company and not the person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. At some point, I would want to build my own business, maybe around data. I'm not sure, but that's why I was asking, like, to understand from your experience how that had to.
Yeah, and I think building a brand takes a lot of time and a lot of work. It's not just posting on LinkedIn, like it's being active in communities, is having conversations with people, is engaging with people in real life, doing a lot of networking. Some people author a book. I think that's a good idea. There's a lot of aspects for building your brand and making sure that you're very well known. And it takes years, right? I've been doing that for years. It takes a very long time. So I think starting early is a good idea if that's something you want to be doing in the long run. And even if you start low key and just learn how to do it, so you don't have to post every day, but maybe 3, 4 times a week in the beginning and then gradually increase that. That's a good idea, right? And I think it's a way of giving back to the community.
Yeah, totally. I think you answered my next question already with with what you saw, because my last question is about I'm relocating to Boston in January. I wanted to ask you, what would you do if you were in my position? Like, I'm going to be there managing my current team and also building a team there. But I think that many of the things that you mentioned now, like networking, attending meetups, and everything in that line would be very aligned with what something I would say as a good idea of looking in this new location.
Yeah. Are you going to continue working for your current company just for remotely?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And are you going to hire more people down the line?
that's the plan. Mhm.
Okay. So, if I were to relocate to a new country, I would probably want to see what kind of meetup groups are there. So, meetup.com and just look for data groups in the area. I would post on LinkedIn to ask, I'm moving to Boston. Does anybody know any meetup groups or any data groups I should be part of? Any people I should connect with? And then when I move, I would post and say, I'm in Boston. If anyone in my network is in Boston, let's meet up, let's grab coffee chats, let's meet and greet. So I would try to build relationships locally. It's going to help you when you have to build a team, then you would start knowing people locally. It's good because you won't feel lonely and you will have community around you. And it's also good because, like, right now you work in Skopje and you're very happy there, but nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. And you being there and knowing local companies is always going to be an advantage, right? In that sense. So I would connect with as many people as I can. I would also like just go on LinkedIn and just search engineer or analytics engineer or analytics engineering managers, filter the location to Boston, see who comes up. I'll send some connection requests and I'll just say in the text, hey, I just moved to Boston. I'm new in town. I would love to meet people. Like, let's connect. So be proactive about it. Don't just wait. And I think some people will be receptive to that. Some people will just ignore that, and that's perfectly fine. But even if 20 or 30% of the people you send connection requests to will respond and want to meet, that's a pretty damn good outcome, right? Because you can send hundreds of those connection requests, meet dozens of people, and you already have a pretty good network in town just for a new person who just arrived, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's exciting, but it can be also challenging just because you work remotely. You're one of the only people in your company who work from there. You're in the wrong time zone because the rest of your team is 6 hours away from you, right? Boston is 6 hours
Yeah,
from Spain.
6 hours.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be challenging from that perspective. And I think when your team finishes working in the afternoon, for you, it's going to be noon or, just early, very early afternoon. So you still have the whole afternoon. Some of that will be work for sure, but connecting with people and spending this time engaging with the local community is going to be a great idea. And by the way, if there is no local community, it doesn't mean that you cannot be the one starting it, right? So you can start the Boston Analytics Engineers group and meetup group and try to find as many people as possible, get them together. You can organize those meetups. So let's say once a month, everybody's coming to a pub. buy your own drinks and let's just connect. There can be topics for discussions or just, open networking sessions. These things work really, really well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll definitely do that if it doesn't exist.
Yeah, you should.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It was helpful.
Thanks, Omar. Thanks everyone for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this kind of content and you want to get more of it. And please, if you have any comments or questions, if you liked anything about this discussion and you want to leave any comments for me or Omar, please leave it down here. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it.